On this edition of The Fifth Estate, they're victims of identity theft and tax fraud, and now they want their lives back.
Why all this information has been changed, who got in, how did they get in?
And what is the Canada Revenue Agency doing to help?
The CRA is constantly assuring you that everything is secure and confidential. I feel now like I've been totally misled.
So how much money has been stolen recently from the public purse? CRA insiders break their silence.
What would your estimate be?
It's more than $100 million. It's like $500 million.
I think it's a free-for-all, essentially.
A free-for-all in what sense?
A free-for-all for them to steal identities of Canadians and exhaust every, benefit possible.
We go on the hunt to find out who is stealing your money.
I would love to know who's responsible because I'd actually really love to know how to get my identity back.
And who is fighting for the people whose accounts have been hacked.
How this happened, why it happened, stop it immediately, and make it right for the victims.
I'm Mark Kelley. This is The Fifth Estate. We're on a lonely county road near Miramichi, New Brunswick, on our way to meet a man fighting to get his life back. 8 months ago, he says someone stole his identity, used it to hack into his Canada Revenue Agency account.
There's the garage there.
Filed a bogus tax return in his name, and cashed in a generous tax refund. Now he's trying to prove it wasn't him.
David.
Yes.
Mark Kelley from the Fifth Estate. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Come on in.
Thank you.
David Miller wants people to hear his story because he fears what happened to him can happen to anyone.
We came here to see you because you reached out to us and we wanted to follow up with you.
All about CRA fraud.
All about CRA fraud.
Yep.
It started when the CRA contacted his wife of 24 years to confirm she was now single. And according to their records, he had moved to Southern Ontario.
I was able to see that the address they had on file was somewhere in Welland, Ontario. I've never lived in Welland, Ontario, never in my life. At this point, I'm just wondering, what's going on? Why all this information has been changed, who got in, how did they get in?
When Miller called the CRA, he says he was told he'd filed his taxes when he hadn't, and the fake David Miller was issued an $11,000 tax refund. Now the CRA wants the money back.
So the alarm bells are going off at this stage.
Absolutely, and especially when we called onto my file. I don't understand how things have changed, so please explain this. We have to get something done here.
And when you were asking for an explanation, what did you get?
Not much as far as an explanation.
Miller thought he was alone with his tax troubles, but then he saw our stories.
Tonight, massive breaches at the Canada Revenue Agency, hacking into taxpayers' personal data, costing millions of dollars.
Last fall, a trove of documents leaked to the Fifth Estate and Radio-Canada revealed the CRA had paid out millions of dollars, your money, to scammers. The documents sounded the alarm. The agency was under siege. Since 2020, there have been a staggering 31,000 security breaches at the agency, exposing the private information of 62,000 taxpayers. Our leaked documents show investigators concluded there were major gaps in CRA's fraud detection systems, and feared Canadians will lose trust in the agency. In Ottawa, the political opposition pounced.
Over $190 million have been improperly paid to scam artists because of privacy breaches at Revenue Canada.
Well, first, fraud is obviously unacceptable, but I believe that the agency has a robust system.
Outside the House, then Revenue Minister Marie-Claude Bibeau tried to reassure taxpayers their money is safe.
So we always want to do better, but we still have a strong system.
The CRA did launch its own investigation. Its aim? Track down the whistleblowers who leaked the embarrassing revelations to the Fifth Estate.
Are you currently investigating the whistleblowers that resulted in the story with the Fifth Estate?
The opposition had heard enough and called Bibeau and the commissioner of the CRA, Bob Hamilton, to appear before a parliamentary committee.
We are currently looking at all sorts of things that go on in the agency.
I'm asking you for a direct answer, sir. Could you please provide the committee with a direct answer one more time? Are you investigating the whistleblowers that resulted in the story?
We are
of
looking
the
to
Fifth Estate?
determine how, if information was true and how it got into the public.
Will there be retribution, and if so, what will it be for the whistleblowers who went
I have no idea at this stage.
As for those 31,000 security breaches, Hamilton says they mostly happened a few years ago.
And we are successful in protecting hundreds of thousands of fraudulent attempts to gain personal and business taxpayer accounts.
Still, the floodgates opened. Angry Canadians from across the country wanted to share their stories with us. From Miramichi to Victoria, BC, where we heard from a retired couple living on the edge. Aisha and Mustafa Nasaji live in this one-bedroom basement apartment. Last April, she got an email from the CRA. Aisha's identity was stolen and used to file a fake tax return.
I mean, the CRA is constantly assuring you that everything is secure and confidential. I feel now like I've been totally misled.
The CRA froze her account while it investigates, which means Aisha has been locked out of some government benefits she's entitled to, and fears more may follow.
So we'll be left with about $400 a month for all expenses, everything together. And I mean, that's not manageable. That doesn't barely cover your food bill.
She's tried contacting the CRA's Identity Protection Department. She gets a message that says if no one returns her call, call back in 15 days.
The Canada Revenue Agency. For service in English, press 1.
So she says she's called back every 15 days for 9 months.
Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Did you notice incorrect information on your My account? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. If you have reason to think that your account has been compromised, please continue.
That's it. That's all you ever get from them. I think the solution has to start with the government being honest about what has happened, not trying to deny it, and go on a witch hunt for whistleblowers. It's just making a bad problem worse.
Back in New Brunswick, David Meller and his wife Deanne are also getting desperate. He says his account has also been frozen for months, and his disability payments slashed until he can file his real tax return.
Patience, it's running low. It's because it's affecting my life. So they're also chewing back to get all the extra money that I received. But it's not extra money. It's because of this fraud. I mean, initially we started pushing payments aside. Who can we pay? What can we pay? How can we pay them? But since then, it's kind of spiraled completely out of control.
How badly out of control? He says he's just weeks away from foreclosure.
I've lost my truck right now. I'm about a month and a half away from losing my house.
So how did imposters take over those CRA accounts? Well, this much we know. David and Aisha didn't do their own taxes. Instead, they handed over their financial and personal information to what's known as third-party tax filers.
There are thousands of these tax filer businesses in Canada, all part of an almost $2 billion a year regulated industry where they file your taxes for you as an approved partner of the CRA. But what safeguards are in place to protect your private information? That's what worries Shauna Roy. She worked for the CRA for 12 years. Her last job? Investigating tax fraud. She left the agency and now has plenty to say about the problems plaguing it.
What do you learn about fraudsters as you start to get more experience on the job?
Fraudsters? I think they're just spineless, relentless.
Relentless, she says, in finding ways to hack into accounts and steal identities. sometimes through third-party tax filers.
Tax filers have special codes that allow them to access your CRA account and file your taxes directly to the agency. At least that's how it's supposed to work. But those leaked CRA documents reveal major cracks in the system.
Bad actors are using those codes and stolen identities to file fake tax returns in your name, get real refunds, and direct them to bank accounts they control without you even knowing.
It's hard for me, I feel like at this point now, to trust any of them, any third party. Because I just saw so much.
What did you learn?
What did I learn?
About that relationship, about having third-party tax preparers.
I learned that's a very dangerous relationship because there's so much abuse that happens and identity theft happening from these third-party prep companies, right?
In some cases, tax filer codes are sold on the dark web along with personal data, giving scammers what they need to hack into your tax account.
I think it's a free-for-all, essentially.
Free-for-all in what sense?
A free-for-all for them to steal identities of Canadians and exhaust every, benefit possible.
When we come back, we go on the hunt for fraudsters who hacked into one BC man's account.
The fact that people can have accounts set up that are in their name, but they had absolutely no relation to setting up is wild.
Our investigation into tax fraud, stolen identities, and stolen lives brought us to British Columbia's interior. We were contacted by yet another taxpayer who says someone filed a fake tax claim in his name, and he wants help finding out who.
But this story has a twist. This guy went on the offensive. He started digging, he found some clues, and that's where this story gets interesting.
We've agreed not to identify the victim other than to say he lives here in Kelowna. He fears speaking out might get him hacked again. His nightmare began in July 2023 when he tried to log into his confidential CRA account.
And what was freaking me out was I couldn't log in.
You're locked out of your own account?
I'm locked out of my own life. And I have no idea what's changed.
So he called the CRA to get into his account. And once in, what he saw on his profile didn't add up. H&R Block, H&R Block Canada. According to his CRA account, H&R Block was now his new authorized tax representative.
So I'm clear on H&R Block. Had you ever been a client of H&R Block?
Never. How was my identity stolen in the first place? How did somebody get a hold of all this information? I actually called H&R Block. I reached out because I went, okay, what is going on?
He says someone at H&R Block promised to investigate. He says he was issued a case number and told to wait. But it went from bad to worse when the CRA sent a letter implying he was the fraudster.
They sent me a somewhat terrifying letter, and we'd like that money back by this date, or it's compounding interest from there on.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, what now? What? Wait, what?
The letter told the Kelowna victim he owed $30,000 and had 3 weeks to pay it back. Thank you, Bob Hamilton.
How did that make you feel?
Oh God, my gut dropped.
But you haven't done anything wrong.
No.
For months, he says he waited for an update from H&R Block to explain how an account was set up in his name. But then he got a big break. A letter sent to him at his parents' house in Kelowna, where he once lived, from a bank he'd never heard of, DC Bank in Calgary.
You didn't have a bank account with DC Bank?
I didn't even know what DC Bank was.
He learned DC Bank partnered with H&R Block to process CRA tax refunds. So he called the bank and asked for the records of the account set up in his name. And there they were, a little more than a month of transactions after the imposter got his tax refund. Money stolen from the public purse, from a fake tax claim processed through H&R Block. The refund then put into a DC Bank prepaid MasterCard.
Well, my first thought was, boy, does H&R Block and I guess relatedly DC Bank have a world of trouble ahead of them.
We took those DC bank records to a forensic fraud investigator, Vanessa Yafola.
You know, the fact that people could have accounts set up that are in their name, but they had absolutely no relation to setting up is wild. And especially when those accounts are used to scam the Canada Revenue Agency, that's a real serious problem for the corporations that are allowing their accounts and their businesses to be used in this way.
If you're the fraudster, do you need to have a fair amount of experience or sophistication?
For something like this, you do need a fair amount of experience or sophistication. Yep, that's a complete account takeover.
A complete account takeover, but one that left clues about who the imposter was. The bank record shows someone named Heidi Gurman transferred $255 to the imposter's DC bank account. We thought she may be involved in the scam, or at least know the scammer. So we set out to find her. 5 hours from Kelowna, through BC's Kootenay region, we arrived in the town of Creston. And that's where we found Heidi Gurman slinging beers at Jimmy's Pub.
We have also from Stanley Park, which is from Vancouver, the Amber Ale, and Parklandia, which is a hazy IPA.
But if we thought Gurman could lead us to the imposter, we were in for a surprise, and so was she.
That one's for you.
So we're going down trying to look for clues about how this money was spent.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, a name pops up. Do you recognize that name?
Yeah, that's my name.
But Gurman told us she'd never sent an e-transfer to anyone on that day, let alone from a DC bank account she never had.
That's you.
Huh.
So it appears...
It's like really creepy.
Do you have a bank account at DC Bank?
Where?
DC Bank.
I don't even know what DC is.
So maybe we had the wrong Heidi Gurman. Maybe not. Turns out her CRA account was hacked as well.
The day I picked up 2 envelopes, they're both from, CRA. One was saying that they had found that the 2022 tax refund was fraudulent and I owed $10,000, and that it was done in H&R Block in Calgary, which I've never been to an H&R Block in Calgary. The second letter said that if I didn't return the $10,000, that they had the ability to garnish my wages. That's what freaked me out. The thing that made me the most nervous is that I have kids that live in my world, right? I don't have a partner. I'm a single person, so.
And kids who rely on you.
Yeah, exactly.
We checked her story, and she is the victim of identity theft. Yet her account's been frozen while the CRA investigates. She says during this ordeal, she's lost time, money, and faith.
And, I haven't received like GST checks or anything in quite a few years.
What do you want to know? Do you want to know who's responsible for this?
Yeah, I would love to know who's responsible, because I'd actually really love to know how to get my identity back.
So who is the fake Heidi Gurman? And could it be this was a team of scammers at work? Fraud expert Vanessa Yafola's advice: don't give up.
In your experience, when you look at these individual frauds, do the fraudsters often, 2 things, leave clues and make mistakes?
Well, everyone makes mistakes, so why can't fraudsters?
So we pored over those DC bank transactions to see if the fraudster left any tracks. It was July 2023 when the impersonator received a bogus tax refund of more than $9,300. According to our records, a half hour later, the person comes to this bank in St. Albert, just outside of Edmonton, and withdraws some cash. And that's when the spending spree began. The records show that first withdrawal was for $2,500. Then the imposter e-transfers almost $4,000 to other accounts. The next morning, the scammer spends $36 at a mobile phone store in St. Albert, $12 at a nearby Greek restaurant, and and then headed south to Banff, spending $144 at the Banff Gondola gift shop. And then dined out at Earl's big time, racking up a bill of $263. This spending spree of almost $7 grand in stolen money, bankrolled by you, the Canadian taxpayer.
Well, we went inside to speak to the manager, hoping to get lucky, asking him if he still had CCTV footage from that night. But because that was back in 2023, we were told we're out of luck.
So we went back to square one, the Kelowna victim's CRA file. We learned whoever stole his identity used a numbered company in Edmonton to issue a fake T4 slip to get that tax refund. So we found the company's address and headed there.
Our investigation has revealed this little bungalow in North Edmonton was headquarters to 3 bogus companies linked to the tax fraud. Whoever lived there at the time is now long gone, but the address itself is an important clue.
Buried in those corporate records, we found a reference to a second address. So we did a land title search and found a name, Doug Poplett. We searched his name and discovered he's a career criminal with a rap sheet as long as your arm. 70 convictions over 2 decades. We scoured social media accounts and learned Poplett was then living in nearby St. Albert with his wife, Christina Cherpak. Here she is making popcorn on TikTok. We've learned that together, Cherpak and Poplett face dozens of criminal charges since 2020, many involving fraud, as well as impersonating others, break and enter, and possession of identity documents belonging to other people. Cherpak's charges were withdrawn. He was convicted on several counts. So could they be the scammers working together? We needed a lucky break, and we got it. We had one place left to check out on the list of DC Bank transactions. A restaurant called Len Steve's in Edmonton's South End. Those bank records showed a $525 transaction was made here on August 25, 2023. We showed the bank records to the restaurant's owner, Len Regondola.
And we were looking at some of the transactions. Do you recognize those dates?
Absolutely, sir, because our credit card machine was stolen during that time.
She has a vivid memory of a couple arriving in a restaurant just before closing time. She discovered after they left, her credit card machine had been stolen. Then someone tried to use the machine to process $26,000 in bogus refunds until Regondola stopped it.
I called the attention of the police and reported it. And I give a note of everything, the evidence, I sent it to them. But up to this moment, there's no response. It's been a year now.
Regondola showed us the credit card numbers used in the scam. And one in particular stood out for us. It ended in 9174. It was the same DC Bank MasterCard we'd been tracking, the same one being used on this spending spree.
And you have CCTV footage
of this
of the people that you believe stole your credit card machine.
Yes, yeah.
And here they are. First, the man walks in. His height and build matches that of Doug Poplett. And then a woman walks by and stares directly into the camera, leaving little doubt it's Poplett's wife, Christina Cherpak. We don't know if they set up the H&R Block account to file the fake tax return, but we do know they were using the prepaid credit card linked to that account.
Come to think of it, to do one crime and another crime, it's working for them. It means they're getting money to redo it again, you know?
Because they're getting away with it.
Yes, and that should stop.
Poplett has just been released from jail on an unrelated fraud charge. We're told he's now in a treatment facility in Alberta. We contacted his lawyer, who told us Poplett respectfully declined our interview request. Cherpak has not responded. So that left a key unanswered question. Who set up the account with H&R Block to get the bogus refund in the first place? And that's where our story takes another twist when we come back.
Hi, Cherry. My name is Mark Kelley. I'm calling from the CBC program, The Fifth Estate. How are you?
We investigate concerns about the safety and security of your tax accounts. Our investigation into hacked CRA accounts and the tax filing industry has taken us to the United States, home to some of the biggest tax filing firms. The two top tax filing companies in Canada, Intuit and H&R Block, are American-owned darlings of the stock market.
So let's look at the 3 best performers in the S&P 500, and let's start with H&R Block.
The tax filing industry did more than $12 billion in business in the U.S. in 2024.
It's called the Intuit Dome and is set to become the most expensive basketball-only stadium in America.
Intuit, the makers of TurboTax, recently paid $500 million to buy the naming rights of this stadium in California. Clearly, filing people's taxes is paying off.
When H&R Block's tax experts do your taxes for you, tax season feels as good as all those other seasons, like fishing season.
As this ad shows, it's an industry built on brand recognition, the ease of convenience, and trust. Today, a staggering 90% of Americans and Canadians send their financial and personal data to a private tax filer to submit their returns. But it begs the question, why?
It really relies on a system of trust between, you as the consumer, right, going in with your private data and handing it over to somebody and trusting them to do the right thing.
Carleton University's Jennifer Robson says, in an age of hackers and identity theft, getting someone to file your taxes is adding a layer of risk and exposure.
I think that there are some reasonable concerns. I mean, you've been doing reporting on people's data breaches. It is convenient to be able to hand off a task that you don't look forward to somebody else. But like I said, it really requires a lot of trust. So who is looking out for the consumer interest in terms of their interaction, right, with these tax preparers?
For an industry built on trust, that trust is starting to wear thin here in the U.S. Capitol. Last year, both Intuit and H&R Block were accused of deceptive advertising for offering free filing services that weren't always free. Intuit paid a $141 million settlement but admitted no wrongdoing. In a separate case, H&R Block settled for $7 million. Then the U.S. operations of H&R Block revealed they'd been hacked by cybercriminals. The tax firm sent a letter to customers about a data security incident. It's believed 23,000 accounts were compromised.
When it comes to filing taxes online, the status quo is unacceptable.
Think about it. If you can bank online, why not file your taxes online, directly to the government? That's an issue the nonprofit progressive news site More Perfect Union dug into.
Well, for years, tax prep companies like Intuit and H&R Block spent millions of dollars lobbying the government to stop the IRS from providing an easy-to-use free file option.
The IRS is now taking some tentative steps, following countries like France, the UK, and Germany by offering a free direct filing option for some taxpayers.
Hi, I'm Danny Werfel. I'm the IRS Commissioner. Now the entire IRS team is really excited.
Good news for taxpayers, bad news for tax filers.
The IRS could be considering creating its own tax service, but it would eviscerate the business models of some of the tax preparation companies. I think of H&R Block as well as Intuit.
Back in Canada, the CRA was also developing a free product to compete with the tax filer industry. In 2018, it began developing software, according to Jennifer Robson.
And then kind of out of nowhere, they were told, stand down. We're not going to proceed with the project anymore. And I've never had a satisfactory answer as to why that was the case.
Who made that decision?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, it would have to have been a decision that was taken at a senior enough level.
It was at that same time, back in 2018, that a new lobby group emerged on the scene in Canada representing the tax filing industry, called Tax Filer Empowerment Canada.
Doing your taxes shouldn't be taxing.
we're here to make it easy for you.
Canada by name, American by design. The U.S. Tax Filer Lobby Group and its Washington-based lobbyist were among the founding members. And unlike the frosty relations with some lawmakers in the U.S., the Liberal government seemed to welcome the lobby group with open arms. There were chummy photos, social media posts with Liberal revenue ministers. The lobby group even hired a former CRA commissioner, Andrew Troish, as its executive advisor. And the lobby group's efforts quickly paid off. In 2019, it announced to its members, the CRA does not plan to develop its own software, just collaborations with the Tax Filer Lobby Group to develop commercial products. So much for direct filing.
Who is the person who's standing up and saying that in this country right now? That maybe we don't need these guys.
Well, I mean, there's me and a small group of academics. This issue needs a champion. Somebody needs who actually is in a position of decision-making power.
You solve fraud, you think you're going to be a hero, and then they're like, we're closing the division.
Former CRA investigator Shauna Roy wanted to be that champion. She saw firsthand how scammers targeted tax filing companies when she was working for an anti-fraud unit.
In your opinion, in your experience, what you're seeing is that we're giving just too much of our personal and private information to these tax filers.
Absolutely.
But they can't all be bad, Sean.
Not all bad, but the main ones that I saw on those claims, it'd be the same recurring third-party companies.
She urged her bosses to do an audit of third-party tax filers to weed out any scammers. But she says her anti-fraud unit was disbanded and she left the CRA disillusioned.
It got to the point where I felt like I found out something that I wasn't supposed to find out. From then till now, it's been stressful because I every day would think of who's going to be the victim today, whose life's going to be ruined.
Today, more public servants are sounding the alarm. One CRA investigator wrote to us in confidence, "No organization in Canada breaches privacy for Canadians more than the CRA." And another, "Tax compliance in Canada has essentially become the Wild West. Canadians would be shocked to learn the extent to which the CRA is ignoring tax fraud in Canada." And then we heard from a high-ranking CRA official. Concerned about retribution from the CRA, we have agreed to conceal their identity and alter their voice.
I think Canadians deserve better. I think they should demand better. I know we can do better, but the willingness to do better, it's just getting short-circuited as you move up in the layers of the organization. The minister's discussion about we have robust systems, she's out to lunch.
The source says it's not just tax filer fraud. They say the CRA isn't being honest with Canadians about how much it's been duped by scammers in recent years.
What would your estimate be?
It's more than 100 million. It's more than that. I have first-hand experience with cases that eclipse that. It's like $500 million.
Internal CRA documents leaked to the Fifth Estate provide example after example. Bogus claims paid out without review. It was impossible for CRA to proactively detect fraud. Refunds are being issued before they can be intercepted. In one scheme alone, $128 million in bogus refunds were claimed.
I think that if you don't have a system that's fair, where hard-working Canadians who willingly pay their share to have it stolen by a bad actor so easily, and for it to not be pursued, there is no consequence.
There were a series of articles that came out with the Fifth Estate and prompting a parliamentary committee, a lot of questions being asked. What was the feeling inside the CRA?
I think that there was panic, but there are also people who quietly said, finally, someone is talking about it. Someone has shattered that sort of cone of silence and brought it into the daylight.
So then has the effort become more important to protect the reputation of the CRA or to protect our money?
I think that, in my experience, it's really about protecting the reputation of the agency.
And you believe this is something that Canadians need to know?
Absolutely. I think they deserve to know. I think they need to know that. And they're going to be angry, and rightfully so. But I think that pressure will force people that have been unwilling to change. Tax season is coming. It's going to happen all over again.
When we come back, we investigate who set up the accounts that enable the imposters to spend our tax dollars.
You have to have a certain amount of knowledge and sophistication and access that's going to facilitate this fraud. Full stop.
Our investigation into hacked CRA accounts and stolen identities led us to victims across the country who feel abandoned, alone, and desperate to get their lives back. We tracked down this couple, caught on surveillance camera, that were using a prepaid credit card loaded with money from a tax fraud. A tax return filed with the stolen identity of a Kelowna man, a tax return filed through H&R Block. So he called H&R Block's head office in Calgary to ask how this could happen.
And so I told her, I am a victim of identity fraud, and I'm trying desperately to get any kind of information I can. And she said, oh, well, that's interesting. This particular tax file is flagged.
So H&R Block was on the case. Or was it? First, he says he was told his file had gone missing. Then he says the tax firm escalated his file and promised they'd call in the police.
It's Chantal calling from H&R Block. Sorry that it's taking me a while to get back to you.
Almost a year after reporting the fraud, an H&R Block investigator left the victim a voicemail. The firm determined the bogus return was filed at one of H&R Block's franchises.
The office that filed the taxes is actually a franchise office. So when we couldn't find you in our system, it is because our franchises have their own systems and we can't see the information.
Those bank records show the tax return was filed at an H&R Block franchise at the shopping plaza in Spruce Grove, west of Edmonton. So how did an imposter with a stolen identity open an account here? We gave the franchise owner a call.
Hi, Cherry. My name is Mark Kelley. I'm calling from the CBC program, The Fifth Estate. We're doing a story about identity theft and tax fraud, and we can see that whoever this imposter was filing his taxes and collecting that return through your H&R Block branch in Spruce Grove.
And how did you get my number?
From the phone book.
What's your phone number?
I gave her my number, and then
she hung up.
So did anyone from H&R Block report the fraud to the Mounties? The Spruce Grove RCMP told us they can't find any records of being contacted by H&R Block. As for the Kelowna victim, he says he hasn't heard from H&R Block since that voicemail last June.
There's been zero communication from H&R Block from anybody.
H&R Block declined our request for an on-camera interview. In a statement, the tax firm said, "You make statements that seek to correlate specific instances of alleged individual identity theft as somehow being related to or the fault of H&R Block Canada. This is simply untrue. Adding our investigation into the Kelowna man's case is misleading and irresponsible and based on nothing more than speculation." As for the Canada Revenue Agency, its Commissioner Bob Hamilton told a parliamentary committee and Canadian taxpayers, "Don't worry, he has your back."
Where people are at least trying to attack us, I think we're getting better and better at resisting those. And I think the other thing that we pay a lot of attention to is when we know about it, we block the account, we take action, and then we pay attention to the individual. We try to resolve them as quickly as we can.
Well, that might come as news to David Meller. Desperate to have his identity restored, he emailed Hamilton. He says it wasn't even acknowledged.
What I want immediately is a letter from the government just saying that, you know what, your account has been hacked.
I mean, that letter would really help you and help you hold on to your house.
It would, absolutely.
We wanted to speak to the CRA commissioner too. We had questions about the rampant identity theft, the hacked accounts, and the hundreds of millions of dollars stolen from the public purse. But Bob Hamilton declined our interview request. Our investigation has revealed there have been tens of thousands of privacy breaches reported at the CRA and tax filer firms across the country. And there are stories we uncovered. The pensioner in Victoria struggling to put food on her table.
a bartender in Creston, now working extra shifts to make ends meet. And the Mellors in Miramichi. Just days before this broadcast, and 7 months after he learned his account was hacked, the CRA finally processed the real David's tax return. But whoever stole his identity still has it.
Does it make you feel vulnerable when this can happen overnight and then have these long-term effects on your life?
As far as vulnerable, absolutely. Too many people, it's too easy to get access to a lot of information.
How are you holding up?
Hard times. Really hard times.
Yeah, you got a lot on the line here.
Absolutely.
But he's still waiting for his tax refund, still waiting for his credit rating to be restored, and still waiting for an explanation from the CRA.
Well, if we lose the house, we lose everything, except we still have each other.
Huh?
Yeah, I don't want to sell.
No, me neither.